Hi, this is Stephanie from the Clean Start Challenge. As you know, a couple weeks ago, I actually had an opportunity to interview Karen from sugarlinks.com. I had a little technical difficulty with Skype, and Pamela totally failed on me. Well, it didn't fail, it just kept repeating my voice in like a weird echo. So, this is her entire video, or her entire interview in full, with my edited questions because the other one sounded absolutely horrible. Okay, so here we go. So the first question I had for Karen was to tell us about Sugarlinks and how she got started blogging.
Oh, okay. Well, I started blogging Chocolunks in one form or another, in February of 2004. So I'm coming up on 7 years.
Okay.
Um, and I started actually because my husband and I were in the process of adopting our daughter. And I'm from the Caribbean, I'm from Trinidad, and my husband is English. And most of our family was overseas. We were here, and they were feeling very disconnected from the process.
Okay.
And so I was online one night Googling God knows what, and I came across a blog. At the time, it was called Jumping Monkeys. I don't think it exists anymore. And I remember looking at it going, wow, this is kind of cool. It's sort of an online diary. This might be a really great way to keep my family up to date on what's going on with the adoption. So I emailed the woman and asked her what she did, and she pointed me to TypePad at the time. And so I started my blog then. It was really about just kind of keeping family up to date on what was going on. And the only reason I didn't make it private was because I figured that my parents and my husband's parents, who aren't particularly web savvy, um, that I didn't want to make it more complicated for them to have passwords and stuff. And I assumed nobody would ever read my blog anyway. I mean, the web is a big place. So that's why I started it. And I called it Chocolunks because in Trinidad, that's the word we use for children, to mean sweetheart. Like, so somebody, you call a child a sweet little Chocolunks.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so that's sort of how it started. And obviously it's evolved a lot since then. I actually don't write that much about my daughter anymore at all. But photography has always been a hobby of mine. So for a while it was just a straight photo blog. When I decided that I didn't want to really talk about adoption anymore, I started feeling like my daughter was a poster child for adoption, and
Mm,
that ultimately, adoption was her story to tell, not really mine. And
okay.
so I switched to a photo blog just to kind of keep my photography chop sharp, right? Like, you end up taking a lot of pictures and, not printing them or not putting them anywhere. And so I thought, well, this will be a good way to kind of make sure that lots of people are seeing my photographs, which will make me in turn work hard on making them look decent.
Hmm.
And so that was kind of what happened there. And then, about 2 years ago is when I finally decided to quit my law job. I was an attorney for many, many years. Still am an attorney, still licensed, but I don't practice anymore. And I decided to stop practicing and really revamp the site and make it sort of my professional representation of what I can do. So that's the long story of how it came to be.
Okay, so what was your last straw moment, the one that made you leave your law career and try something totally different?
Uh, it's really funny. I actually just recently told this story at a speaking gig, and I'm working on a second book right now, and I know that this story is going to go and get into books, so this is kind of a spoiler alert, I guess.
Okay.
But I had been working for a long time, and then I took a break. Actually, we went back to Trinidad. My husband actually got a job offer in Trinidad, so I took a break for 2 years, um, and then came back to the U.S. in 2007, and a former boss asked me to come work for him. And I really resisted. I kind of knew I didn't want to go back to it, but he gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. Every time I said, well, I'm really worried about X, he was like, okay, well, we'll make sure that X doesn't happen. And he kind of really, made it so I couldn't refuse the job. So
Okay.
I took the job, and it really was, as law jobs go, probably the best job I could have had. I was being paid very well. I was traveling, which was great. I was allowed to work from home whenever I wanted. And literally, it was pretty much the perfect law job.
Hmm.
And one day I was dealing with I was in-house. It was a software company, and I was dealing with what in-house lawyers call clients, which are basically another employee of the company.
Right.
And he was uh, really hell-bent on doing something that was clearly illegal.
Mhm.
And we kind of got into it. He started, yelling at me and saying that I was impeding business. And I was yelling at him that I was trying to keep him out of the, orange jumpsuit. And, and I wasn't trying to impede business, and that I was willing to sit and brainstorm with him how we could achieve the objective he wanted, but do it in an illegal way. And he was really, really angry. And I remember at one point he yelled at me. He said, "I'm not going to tell you you're stupid, but you're pretty close to it," he said.
Oh, wow.
And I remember yelling back at him. I said, "You know what? Fine, I'm stupid. You want to call me stupid? Maybe you're right. Maybe I am stupid, but over my dead body, this is going to happen." And I came home and I was just shaking with anger. And my husband tried to calm me down. And I called my dad, who tends to be my mentor in a lot of career ideas. And I remember him saying, my husband, put Marcus on the line. And he put Marcus on the line, and he said, "Marcus, go give her a shot of rum." and so I got off the phone, and my husband proceeded to get me very drunk. And somehow through the fog of having, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 drinks, I remember thinking, the truth is, no matter where I go as a lawyer, there's always going to be somebody who I'm going to have to talk off the ledge. And if I get so upset that my husband and my father are colluding to get me drunk to calm me down, maybe this was not the career I was meant to be, right? That it
Right.
wasn't so much about that difficult client as it was the fact that I wasn't dealing well with it. And that was the moment when I was like, okay, you know what? I need to figure out a way to get out of this, because it's not healthy for me to do it. And I don't have the constitution to deal with it, clearly, even after, and I'd been a lawyer at that point for 15 or 16 years.
Oh, wow.
And I'd had a very, very successful career of it. I did very, very well in my law career. I pretty much had everything I could ever want as far as a career was going. And I was miserable. And that was the point where I was like, you know what? I have the best job there is. I have the best law job there is. There's nothing I could complain about. And yet I'm unhappy. And so it's time to make a change.
Right.
And so that was it. The moment when my husband and my father got me drunk.
What inspired you to write The Beauty of Different?
Well, I had been, and this is something actually, as I was thinking about this when you were telling me earlier before we started, what your plans were for yourself. I quit my job. When I quit my law job, I had decided that it was the first time I'd ever quit a job without a plan, right? Every time I'd ever quit a job in the past, I always had another job I was going to, or when my husband had a job and I was going home, we had a 1-year-old at the time, and I was like, this is great. I can focus on motherhood for a while. So I always had a plan. And this was the first time that I was like, you know what? I'm out. I can't do this. Don't know what I'm going to do next. So I decided, I actually sat down and wrote down everything that I loved to do. Mm-hmm. Everything, including singing in the shower or my daughter, everything that really gave me joy. Mm-hmm. And then after I made this very long list, I sort of started grouping them to see what they had in common. Mm. And it turned out that there were 3 things that I loved to do. I loved to speak, public speaking. I loved writing, and I loved photography. Speak, write, shoot is what I call it. Speak, write, shoot. Those are the things I loved. And so I decided that what I was going to do was just going to create my website that showcased those 3 things, right? Mm-hmm. And not really give myself a title, and just see what kind of opportunities came along. And if an opportunity came along that either A, sounded like a lot of fun, or B, allowed me to do 2 of the 3 things, then I would take it. And that's sort of how I did it. So if I could write and use photography to support it, great. Or if I was speaking and use photography to support my speaking, awesome. So that was sort of the plan. And I started getting a lot of speaking gigs, which was great. And Oprah came on, I got on the Oprah show and stuff like that. So a lot of things started coming along, but there were a lot that were free. And I thought, okay, I need to figure out how to make money doing this. The only thing I felt really qualified to do was to talk about law or engineering, which is what my degrees are in, and I didn't want to talk about those. And my blog is very sort of feel good, be that all you can be, but I didn't feel like I was qualified to actually be paid to talk about it. I'm not a sociologist or a psychologist. So I thought, well, you know what, maybe I should write a book, because, people will hire author so-and-so to come talk. So I should write a book. And that's literally how I came up with the decision to write a book. And then it was like, well, what am I going to write about? And a friend, an acquaintance, an online friend called me, and they had just started a blogging conference called Blogalicious.
Oh, right. Okay.
And they called me and they said, we want you to be the keynote speaker. And I was like, great. I'm happy to do it. What do you want to talk about? And the woman, Stacy, who called me, she said, well, this is sort of the purpose of our conference. So you could talk about this purpose, but me personally, you have a very non-traditional blog, and I'd love to see how you got there. Like, I'd love to hear how you got there.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't ask her at the time what she meant by non-traditional. I said, you know what? I'm just going to take what you just said to me and think about it for a while. And so I went away and I kind of thought about it, and I thought, I've heard that all my life, that sort of, you're a lawyer, you don't act like any lawyer I know, or, oh, Karen, you're not really black, or, oh, you went to Texas A&M University, and that's so conservative, and you're not a conservative person. I can't believe you're an Aggie. And there was always this sort of assumptions that people had about me that I ended up, whatever that stereotype or weirdness was, I wasn't. And at first it used to really tick me off. Like if somebody tells you, you're not really black,
Right.
How are you respond? If the person who tells you you're not really black is not black, then you wonder, well, what kind of messed up idea do you have of what black is?
I totally understand.
You're not really black is black, then you're like, but what? I never, right? Like, there's no way to take that positively, right?
Right.
But in a lot of ways, it's always end up working to my benefit. Like whatever it was that people had in their mind, what a lawyer was supposed to be like, or what somebody who went to my university was supposed to be like, or somebody who looked like me, what's it like to, what a woman's supposed to be like. Every single time it's worked to my benefit to not be whatever that was.
Okay.
And I thought, well, you know what? That's kind of the beauty of different. And I thought, that's what I'm going to talk about at this conference is the beauty of different. And then I thought, well, you know what? That's a really great topic for a book, was to talk about whatever it is that makes you different and makes you not be what people expect. That's the source of your beauty. And it's a powerful thing. And what I found was so many people have things about them that are different that they're actually ashamed of, right? That they're, and it could be anything. It could be race. It could be something physical. It could be the way they think, the way they talk, the way they love, the way they pray, whatever it is that makes them feel like they don't fit in. Oftentimes, that's actually, it's all about just framing it in a positive way, right? Turning it and framing it in a way that's like, you know what, this is actually my superpower. And if you have an issue with it, that's really your issue, but I'm going to use this for good and not evil, and you're going to see how far I go. So that's really how the book came about. That's a long answer to your question, but that's how the book came about.
What advice would you give a mom or woman who is interested in following their own passions or dreams?
There's a couple of things. I think that, there's two things. One is I think generally people don't spend enough time getting to know themselves. Not with the kind of interest we spend in getting to know other people. And I think it's one thing to go, oh, you know what, I think I want to do that. That sounds cool, right? And another thing to go, you know what, here are the things that I know really turn me on, and I need to figure out a way to do that for a living, right? And so that's one thing. I think there's a lot of self-knowledge that has to happen. And for me, a lot of that happened with journaling, journaling, doing vision boards, doing sort of exercises that made me, doing that list of things that really light me up, and really taking the time to kind of delve into what is it that really, really lights you up, really turns you on. And what are your talents? What are you really good at? And a lot of times, like, if you think, what are you really good at? You start to think in terms of business. And I don't think that that's necessarily, I don't think you necessarily need to do that. It could be, you're really good at writing letters to people and making them feel important, or you're really good at listening, or you're really good at whatever. And I think that making a list of the things that you're really good at and the things that you really love doing, I think that'll give you a lot of insight into where you should go. And then the other thing that I think, the other piece of advice is that when you take advice from people, including from me, you have to be careful to listen to the advice that is based in that person's experience and what they learned, and differentiate that from what somebody's saying about you. So it's one thing to say, you know what, here's what I did, and if I were to do it all over again, these were the things I would change on my path. That's one bit of advice that I think is worth listening to. But when somebody says to you, Stephanie, I know you, and you would not be good at this, or you are not cut out to do this.
Right.
I think you really have to take that with a grain of salt. I really think that the only person who really knows you best is you. And especially if you arm yourself with this is what lights me up and this is the kind of stuff that I love to do, you can sort of discard that, because I think a lot of people, including people who are very close to you, will try to tell you what you are.
That's true. Yeah.
And I think that's a really tough thing to do. Now, if that person says to you, okay, Stephanie, you've done something like this before and it didn't work out for you, how would this be different? I think that's different. I think that's sort of guiding you to kind of do some introspection. But for somebody to say, well, I've seen you do that and you failed, don't do it, is a whole other thing. And I don't think really you can take that seriously. I think only you know whether you should do something or not. So those would be my two big pieces.
And I can't forget, one of my favorite questions that I like to ask everybody is if they have a motivational quote, and this is Karen's.
The quote was from George Bernard Shaw.
Okay.
And the quote is, life isn't about finding yourself, life is about creating yourself. And I love that thought.
Do you have a favorite business tool or resource that you often turn to for assistance?
Yeah. You said that, and the first thing that came to mind was my journal, even though that's not particularly a business tool, but it's really helped me a lot. I recently wrote a post on how I use my journal, and I use it for business and for creativity.
Okay.
I use it, I'll email you the link to it. But basically what I do is I keep everything in my journal, and that includes every to-do list, every brainstorming idea for a book, everything that I do, I keep it in one place in a journal that I can't tear out the pages.
Okay.
And it's really helped me to organize my life, and it's really helped me to kind of flip through and get inspiration, and it's also kept me honest. And so even though I use I'm a Mac person and I use the calendar on Mac and everything to kind of that I use in conjunction with my iPhone for alarms and things like that for meetings.
Okay.
To help me organize my life and organize my thoughts, I have really it's a plain journal. It's not dated. It doesn't have anything in it but blank pieces of paper. And I turn it into what I need it to be to kind of manage my mind and my life. So Moleskine journals basically is what I...
Okay, how about mobile devices? What's your favorite?
My favorite mobile device would be my iPhone and then my Nikon camera. I think probably the two of those together. Those are the two electronic devices that are always in my handbag. So
Right.
And there you have it. That was my interview with Karen from skype.com. Thank you. Have a great night, everybody. Bye-bye.